Yerushalmi Chagigah Daf Chof Amar Aleph Rabba. So it said a nice as a medrash. So quoting for the Mishnah, a nice as a medrash. Someone's carrying a medrash. Who knows is a truma? He can carry truma. However, avaloy is a kodesh, but by kodesh who a machmer, and if he's nice a medrash, he can't carry kodesh. Even obviously we're talking about it indirectly. So Rabbi B'Shem Rabbi Yehuda b'nei Ma'aser Shiv, there was a story. There was a story of a person, Shenikva Chavis, who's carrying a barrel, and he got a hole in it. What did he do? Pakhu b'sandalai, and he stuffed it with his shoe. Now, a shoe was Tani Medris, because he carries it, or it carries him. So it's Tani Medris. And since the Maisa happened with Kodesh, there were geyser with Kodesh, not with Truma. Rabbi Zid, Rabbi Yosef, B'Shem, Rabbi Lezer, Ava Vanasa Toho. What happens? Okay, they made the Xer not to care. What happened if you carried it? So he says, okay, if you carried it, you shouldn't have done it, but it's Torah. Kidam Rabbi Lezer, and this is Lashitas Rabbi Lezer. Yeshmen Shamru Lo Yisa Avanasa Tamev. Yeshmen Shamru Lo Yisa Vim Avanasa Toho. Some people say it's Tamev, some say it's Torah. So I was like the sheet that holds that if he was over and he carried it anyway, it's Torah. Rab Zeir, Kumi Rab Mona, Les Hadam Roshalo Yasu Gufi Kazav Eitzala Kodesh. So we had this shadow a few days ago. Is it the beged of the Zav that's an issue, or is it Gufe? So this must be that we're saying that Shloyasu Gufe Kizav Eitzala Kodesh. Because in Tamasu Gufe Kizav Eitzala Kodesh, you're going to say that his body has the din of Zivas. For Kodesh, in other words, somebody that's Nizar for, let's say, Truma, and now he's carrying Kodesh, is a din of, and you're going to say that his body is a din of Zav, Eitzel Kodesh. So, in Temasu Gufa, Kazav, Eitzel Kodesh, I feel Ava Vanasa, Yehei Tami, it should be Tami. Why would it be Tar? So, it must be we hold that he's obviously his guf, knows the guf of the Chaver, who's Makban and Truma, is not Kizav, Eitzel Kodesh. Like tomorrow, and we had a similar answer a few days ago. Actually, he's somebody who's nizer in both, and in other words, he was nizer for truma, and he was eating kodesh at the same time. So you can say that since he's eating both truma and kodesh, maybe he has a mind for both of them. So in other words, we have no raya one way or the other regarding this shaila of whether the guf of the of a chaver that's nizar the truma is considered to be zavetz al kodesh. That question was unanswered. Now we said the last part of Mishnah shaloi kimidas hakodesh midas hatruma shabbat kodesh matis hachutim and agos and hakovim. By kodesh you have to undo any knots. The country of Chaim is talking about the mita sarvel, which is this kind of bed that was more like a stretcher kind of bed. It had ropes going around poles, so you have to undo all the ropes from the poles, and they used to have holes that went into it, so you have to make sure those holes are wiped clean. And vachkach kosher. Once you were you were table it, then you can go and add it. With truma kosher vachkach matel doesn't mean you have to kosher. It just means if it's kosher, we're not worried about it. It's not going to be a chatzitza. So why? Because oichle truma is reason hey, and we'll go through Chaim's Giyaseh ein chatzen oisa. So they're not. They make sure there are no chatzitzas. Oichle kodesh knows nothing stuck to it. There's no chatzitza there. Oichle kodesh, however, since it's not something we said a few days ago, oichle kodesh is something that was rare because only people who ate kodesh were the mishmar of the kohanim. So most people, even kohanim, were not part of the mishmar, and therefore they weren't that zoras when eating kodesh. Therefore, vehein chaytzen ois will go for vehein chaytzen oisa, and they're not makbid. In other words, they could end up with a chatzitza. So therefore, we said oichle truma, you don't have to unnut the kli, in this case the bed, and the Eichlei Kodesh do have to unnut it. Zotei li mishnah locha beis. Kelem hanigmar b'tahira. Tzrichen tefila lekodesh avaloi letruma. So Kelem, even if the nigma b'tahira, in other words, you have a Talmud Chacham who knows to be careful, he's fashioning some kli for hagdish. So even Sneim Tara, still you have to tovel it before using it. Avaloi truma. For truma, you don't have to. We don't have that chumrah. Let's say you have a bunch of pieces of meat in a pot, and you touch one of them. So in terms of kodesh, it all becomes tameh. But if we're talking about truma, so then each meat is considered to be separate, and it's not metama. Or Revi'i b'kodesh pasul, v'ashlishi b'truma. So we know that kodesh goes down to Revi'i, and Revi'i creates psul, so it doesn't spread any further. By truma, the level of tuma that it goes down to is a shlishi, and from shlishi on, it does not spread any tuma. I say from shlishi is not spread. There's nothing more than a shlishi by truma. And with truma nitmes achas miyadav chaverta tahira. If one person's hand becomes tamei, the rabbanon, so his other hand remains tar. That's legabe truma. But kodesh matul shtema. By kodesh, if one became tamei, we assume the other one's tamei too, and you have to taiva both of them. Vayad metamas chaverta by kodesh alo b'truma. One yad can be metama. The other hand, or shehayad metamis chavet b'kodesh lo b'truma, which is fits in better. In other words, the reason by kodesh you have to tovel is because one hand will be metama the other hand. Okay, but not for truma. She was weaving a beged v'tahara. She was doing supposedly v'tahara. So she went to Rishmol to ask him to ask him a question. She had a question. So she went to ask him a question. Amrullah. So she said, "Yadas ani shaloi nitma." I know to become tameh shaloi nasanti ta'atil l'sham. I didn't pay attention to make sure that I did the best shmira I could. Mitoch shahu baitka. So he started asking all kinds of questions to make sure that that was indeed the case, that she was at least shaymerid. Amrullah, she said, actually, nida bus umatcha imi bechevel. There was actually a woman who was a nida, and she came and she stretched a rope with me. So in other words, she took this bag, and the bag was already had shalosh shalosh its boy, so it's already mikabel toma. And she was basically Masit. This Nida was Masit. This Beged. So Abba Isa Shah Amr Rabbi Shmuel Gedolim Heim Divrei Chacham Amru Kelen Igmon B'Tayr Tzrichen Tefillah L'Kodesh Avlod Shum. So you see, she was weaving begadim L'Kodesh, and inadvertently, it became tamei. It was a chashash of tamei. Shuv Maisa is another similar story. She's weaving a handkerchief, a towel, b'tahara, ubas, and this is before it had 3 by 3 its boy, so it's not yet right to be b'kabel tomo. Ubas eitzel Rabbi Shmuel l'sholai. So she went to Rabbi Shmuel to also to ask him, make sure that she did everything okay. Amaloi, she said to him the same thing. I wasn't 100% makbid. But I know it didn't become Tami. Tokshu Boit again, he interviewed her. She said to him, actually, Nifsika Nima Achas, one strand of thread snapped. Ukshati Bafin, I used my mouth to kind of help make a knot, so I can continue weaving it. So, and now, what's the issue? The issue is that her spittle is wet, and let's say, and we're choshish that maybe she was tummy at the time, and now when it's, and what choshish is that even though the beggar didn't have 3 by 3 its boys when she started sewing it, but now when she kept adding more thread, now it had to share, and we're choshish that maybe the spit was still wet, and therefore now that there's 3 by 3 its boys, it's metama. So again, by Shah, Amr Rabbi Shmuel Gedolim Hein Divrei Chacham Shamru Kelen Igmam Ta'ira Tzrichen Tefillah B'Kodesh Avlod Truma. Fine. Achoitech Mishpei Feres HaKodesh. This we just had a few days ago. Someone cuts a tube. He's going to use from a reed to store kodesh in. Choitcho Matbila Ton Tefillah. So Gemara says Nicha Choitcha makes a lot of sense. Fine, cutting it, he touched it, so you have to title it. Matbila, why? V'chachena b'sivit tefillin. Let him wear a glove. Let him wrap it in a towel and stick it into the mikveh and toivel it. Obviously, he holds it loosely, so there's no chatzitza. So why for tefillah does it require? Why to toivel it? If the guy toivel it, why does it require tefillah? So we're talking about the same guy. We originally thought it was 2 different people. Talking about the same guy. So therefore, he touched it when he cut it. So now he has to title it. Back in the Mishnah, when we had said in the Mishnah that that's only negeya for real kodesh. The rest of the Mishnah, however, so that's a chumrah only by real kodesh. In other words, if you're fashioning a kli to use for chulin shenas val taris kodesh, that does not require tefillah. But the rest of the mission, when we say akli mitzaref mashur tachel kodesh, etc., that is negay even for chulin shenasu al gav kodesh. Okay, what we refer to right now is al taharis hakodesh. Rabbi Yochanan Medusa showed Rabbi Akiva. He this is actually from Edis Rabbi Akiva. The name time we learned over there. Rabbi Akiva ourselves like Toys Alabona Gechalim. Shenagat full young Telson Shapels was called. They're all sitting. He touched Mesilas Octyrus, touched one of them. Um, um, so if you touch some of it, the rest of it becomes tame. They all become pus. Reb Shimon ben Lakish, we know that already. What's with Kibbutz Chiddush over here? That's a shiur menachos sheyehu mechubar mechabrin es atzman. That even the shiurim menachos, which no longer require the kli, they still can be mechubar. If you touch one part of it, they all become tameh. Yes, as mina b'shem Rabbi Yochanan mepnei ma amru shiurim menachos mechabrin es atzman. Why? In other words, they don't need a kli now. The shiurim menachos, they don't need a kli. If they don't need a kli, why is the kli mitzaref them? So he said because originally they needed to be in the same kli. So based on that original needing of the kli, therefore they're all tameh. So Nicha says the at one point they all required a kli, so that makes sense. But gecholim never. There's no shear of gecholim. In other words, he would load up the gecholim. As a matter of fact, he loaded it first into a ladle that was four kav, and he poured it into those three kav. So since the four kav ladle was full, when he poured into the three kav, some of it spilled out, so he didn't even use all of it. So they never all the gechol. So it wasn't like you never had a time that all the gechol required a kli. So why are they mitzvah to be metama? So Amar Abun Bakan Tipat of Gechol Shil Mikipurim Shevameshu Chayto Machnas Yom Kippur. He starts with a three kav ladle, and he pours it into a three kav ladle. So since that's the case, the Yatis Olam, we're addressing Taka only Yom Kippur. So Gemara says, Aval b'Gecholin shebachol yoim loy kitinin tamon ispazu mena b'kav gecholim, and the reason is because we see that if let's say he poured it and some of it fell on the floor, so he had these hot coals on the floor, so ispazu mena b'kav gecholim, mechavdon la'ama, he swept them away to the amma. Over Shabbos, since you were choishish maybe for keyboy, so kofen al psachta, they would take a big bowl and pour it over so people no one would step on it and get burnt. Kahanim were walking barefoot, so they didn't want anybody to get burnt. They had no shear. In other words, all these over here, they had no shear. So in other words, he never used all of them. Forget about that. Not just Kecholma, but all these other cases also, they didn't have. You can put in as much as you want. So therefore, that being the case, so mipnei, so Eitzel says, so loy mipnei shenisku l'kalyan, v'ach mipnei shenisku l'kalyan. But the reason is nothing to do with the share, nothing to do with the amount you're going to use them. Some in you're not going to use, and there is no share. But because they needed a kli, at one point all these items had to be put in a kli. Therefore, that creates a chashivas that they even metama when they don't need the kli, even when they finished using them.